So what have you accomplished? Let's go back to GlobalMatix. What would have happened if the blockchain ledger existed during the various incidents? Imagine how history might have changed. When the CFO tried to modify transaction data, the daily ledger validation would have picked it up right away and sounded all kinds of alarms. Now let's say he had found the developer to write some code to rewrite the entire ledger. The next time a transaction occurred, it would have been published to the world, and everyone, including the auditors and investors, would instantly see that the ledger had been tampered with, as the generated hash would not be valid with the previous chain data. In either case, that CFO would have been fired months earlier than what actually happened, and the chain restored and recreated by restoring the transaction to its original values based on field history. The same would apply to any attempt to modify sales data by employees. And how about the former employees who had modified their own sales records and were claiming that GlobalMatix had tampered with the data? At the time the transaction was published, the salesperson would have received confirmation of the transaction along with the hash of that transaction that was also published. Had there been any error, that would have been the time to address it. Now, though months or years have passed, all GlobalMatix needs to do is share the data from that one sales transaction. That data can result in only one hash value, and if it's the hash value that appears in the public blockchain, that's proof that GlobalMatix data was accurate and unmodified. So instead of long, time-consuming depositions and audits that involve outsiders gaining access to the Salesforce org, GlobalMatix could prove the validity of a transaction using public data. The blockchain ledger could be used in other ways. The company's auditors and accountants would of course have access to the actual transaction data. They could compare that data to the company's bank accounts to ensure that it is valid without having to go through or even have access to the Salesforce org. They could then attest to the validity of the ledger. From that point on, GlobalMatix could prove any transaction, whether it's in court or an investor meeting or a government investigation, and they could do it without granting access to Salesforce or revealing data from any other transaction. With the sales record keeping under control, GlobalMatix soon discovered other opportunities to use private blockchain to improve trust. The travel division started publishing a blockchain of reservations to the public and every interested travel agency. Lost reservations became a thing of the past. When a GlobalMatix hotel manager had overbooked, they couldn't claim to have lost the reservation or that it never existed. The customer or their travel agency could take a hash of the customer's data, show it in the corresponding blockchain entry, and prove that the reservation existed, forcing the hotel manager to find a room or offer compensation. GlobalMatix even started recording case notes and customer emails in a blockchain ledger. Disputes over who said what to whom vanished, as it became impossible for both customers and GlobalMatix customer service people to lie about the contents of any communication. Any customer could at any time take a GlobalMatix message to an attorney or to Twitter and prove the contents of that message against the published blockchain. GlobalMatix's new CEO was very pleased. Implementing the new blockchain ledgers was remarkably inexpensive. The very simplicity of the technology ensured reliability and security. The entire thing was implemented in-house. Getting the organization to like the new system was also easier than expected. It turned out that most of the employees were fundamentally honest and had no problem with the forced honesty that comes from having an immutable ledger. They found it much less stressful to just tell the truth than to have subtle or overt pressure to lie. Those employees who were unhappy with the change didn't last long, and nobody was sad to see them leave. And the CEO was thrilled with the impact on the bottom line. Auditing and legal costs dropped. Fewer outsiders needed access to the Salesforce org, so security costs dropped. And the Salesforce admins were much more productive as they could spend less time examining and auditing records. It's time now to move beyond concepts and get our hands dirty. In the next module, you'll see what a blockchain on Salesforce might actually look like with a full blockchain implementation. Those of you who are not admins or developers may choose to skip the next module and return in the last module, anticipating the future. Though you might want to stick around even if you can't follow the actual code. I'll be discussing the design in the context of what you've learned so far. You might find it more interesting than you expect.